With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. Go to emailrevealer.com, get a copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator. Also, if you go to oppermanreport.com, that's where we have our special members section, where you can go there, you can sign up, you can become a subscriber, and we have all kinds of additional content on there that's it's available only exclusively to members that you won't hear Friday night, you won't hear Saturday night. And also, too, we just set up a documents section on there, too. We're going to be uploading documents. A lot of stuff on this Epstein case we're going to be talking about today. I have it in my possession. I haven't put it up yet, but we have a lot of documents with the Trump lawsuits and that Confessions of a D.C. Madam, Parfrey. We have her phone records and stuff like that. I'm going to be putting up there shortly. Today we have Conchita Sarnoff. She's the author of a book about Jeffrey Epstein called Trafficking. And Conchita, are you there?
Yes, I am, Ed. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. And I think we both agree this is a really, really, really important topic that's not getting the kind of coverage that it should be getting.
Absolutely. I agree with you. The question I guess I ask myself is, given the length of this case, the Jeffrey Epstein criminal case was settled in 2007. He was arrested in 2005. But given the number of victims that he allegedly trafficked and victims who came forward and gave sworn depositions, and the fact that there are 3 pending related cases, 1 in New York and 2 in Florida, certainly we must ask ourselves as investigative reporters and just as citizens of the United States, why is mainstream media gone dark? Why is there a political reason behind it? Do the 2016 presidential elections have anything to do with it? Does the implication of a former president in the Epstein case have anything to do with it, especially because his wife, Madam Secretary Hillary Clinton, is now running for the office of the White House? So I think that we need to ask ourselves many questions that are not being asked in mainstream media, and that I believe are important questions. And they're important questions only because they relate to the future, the safety, and the protection of our children. And I think you will agree with me, Ed, that our children are our future. They are the possibilities to a great future that we can have in this country. So that is, I believe, the one asset that we all must, whether we are leaders, opinion makers, community citizens, we all must protect our children.
Before we get too far into the case, why don't you tell the audience about Conchita Sarnoff? Who is Conchita Sarnoff?
Oh, goodness.
It's a tough question, right?
What a question. Who is Conchita Sarnoff? I think I should ask myself that question every day. What I do, I think the best thing is to answer that as to what I have done. I am the executive director of Alliance to Rescue Victims of Trafficking, a Washington, D.C. nonprofit that helps to raise awareness of human trafficking, and we are looking to open the first safe house to rescue victims of trafficking in Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C., unfortunately, even though it is the nation's capital, does not have a safe house for these children to go to once they've been rescued. So that is what I do professionally. I am also the author of Trafficking, the first book ever published about the Jeffrey Epstein human trafficking case. The reason I started to investigate this case is because I have been investigating the issue of human trafficking for the past 10 years. Prior to that, I was a communications consultant. I did a lot of crisis communications work with Fortune 400 companies and also in Mexico with a presidential candidate. And so during my work, I stumbled into a case in Mexico that brought me to the United States, specifically to New York. And through that case, I then stumbled upon the Jeffrey Epstein case. And strangely enough, I had personal contact, meaning Jeffrey Epstein and the alleged procurer who is now involved and implicated in a case in New York. Virginia Louise Roberts is the victim versus Ghislaine Maxwell, who's the alleged procurer. I had met both Miss Maxwell and Mr. Epstein several times back in the 90s. I knew them socially. And so it stunned me that people like this, number one, that I could even know people like this. That's what stunned me the most, that I could even be associated with people who have allegedly committed such heinous crimes. And number two, that trafficking exists in this country. I mean, remember, we had slavery in the 1800s. It wasn't until the passing of the 13th Amendment that slavery was abolished. Well, here we are again, almost 200 years later, and again we are dealing with the issue of slavery. Only this time, they're not selling and buying African Americans and African American adults. We're now talking about the buying and selling of children for sex, for labor, and for organs. So this crime to me is just beyond heinous. It's something that has got to stop. We are too further down we are too conscious. There's too much information out there. We pretend to be a spiritual country, and I don't mean a religious country, because we happily include or are inclusive of all religions. But we, I think, are a spiritual country, and as a spiritual country, we need to be aware that we cannot abuse and sell and purchase children for any reason whatsoever, be it organs, be it sex trafficking, or be it labor.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, how did you become acquainted with Maxwell and Epstein?
I met them socially at I think at different, at dinner parties, at social functions. I believe I met Miss Maxwell in London through a mutual acquaintance, and I met Mr. Epstein in New York, again, through a mutual acquaintance. And so, I guess had similar friends, and then we participated in similar social functions. And so I would continue to see them over the years. I mean, they weren't individuals who I would call to say hello and invite to dinner, or lunch, but they were people that I saw frequently. And then it wasn't until the early 2000s that I ran into them again in Palm Beach at a New Year's Eve party. But anyway, all of this is in my book. And I think, I think what we should focus on is how I almost lost my life in Mexico because of the investigation, meaning while investigating human trafficking, I went and attempted to interview a federal official who was the director of a local chapter of an organization called DIF, D-I-F, which is the equivalent of the United States Health and Human Services. DIF provides transportation and food and, different social services for underprivileged families and mostly children. So I went to this little town called San Miguel de Tenancingo, and in this little town in Mexico, I found that at the time, we're talking back in 2004, at the time, they had one of the largest trafficking rings in Mexico, and they were taking children from this small town in Mexico and smuggling them into the United States. And then the children were being sold. They were being sold online for child pornography. They were being sold for sexual purposes, and they were transported across the country. And so while I was there interviewing this lady, because the house where I went was at that time the office of this agency of DIF, it originally belonged to a trafficker whose sons had been indicted and were serving 50-year sentences in the United States, and whose owner, the mother of these two sons, had been indicted in Brooklyn and was serving a 10-year federal sentence. So for human trafficking, this family had been jailed and sentenced, and here I am at their home in Mexico and talking to the director of DIF, and this woman stops me in the middle of my questioning and says to me, if you ask one more question, I'm going to ring the bell and the people will come and lynch you. And, you know, I at first, who's going to believe that, right? I didn't believe it. I was there with a bodyguard. But anyway, you'll read the rest of that story in the book, because it really is, it's a riveting story, and how that happens. And it happens to journalists, private investigators all the time. I mean, we read about it in the news every day, how journalists are being lynched and killed and beheaded. And it's not only in the Middle East, it's in Latin America, it's all over the world, in China. So that is really when I realized that I could lose my life because I was investigating something that should be investigated. I realized the significance of the issue and understood that this needs to come out to the light. And as many people as possible need to understand and know that in this country, in the United States of America, in the year 2016, we have over 1 million children being trafficked for sex, and this must stop. And so here I am trying to bring light to an issue that is rather dark, and hoping that everybody, and I mean everybody from community leaders on to residents to kids, will help in this fight, because it is a fight. It is a war against something quite evil and controlled by people who, by the way, have a great deal of power. There's influence peddling, and we'll go back to the Jeffrey Epstein case. Here's a man who committed several, not one, several felonies, even though he was indicted and given a non-prosecution agreement for only one count of solicitation of prostitution with a minor. Well, why on earth, number one, did the prosecution identify the victim as a prostitute? She was underage. She shouldn't have been identified as a prostitute. Number two, why was he only given a non-prosecution agreement? Why wasn't he, like all other human traffickers who have committed similar crimes to Epstein's crimes, why wasn't he, number one, prosecuted under the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which is, by the way, the message in my book, and you will read and understand why. So why wasn't Mr. Epstein prosecuted under the Trafficking Victims Protection Act? Question number one. Question number two, why did he serve only 13 months in a county jail? We've got a case in Florida right now. We've had several cases throughout the last 10 years. But today we have a case, Ed, with a defendant. His name is Archangel Michael, ironically enough, Hernandez. He's a Hispanic, middle class, doesn't have the resources and the influence and the friendships that Mr. Epstein has, and certainly was not allowed to hire the number of attorneys that Mr. Epstein, or could not hire the number of attorneys that Mr. Epstein hired, all of them star attorneys, as you can imagine. And here is this defendant, Mr. Hernandez. He is using the Epstein case because it set precedent. He's using the Epstein case in his defense in order to receive a lower sentence. Well, that is the problem with Mr. Epstein's case. That is one of the many problems. Not only did Mr. Epstein's case set precedent for other human traffickers to go to the courts and say, I'm sorry, like Mr. Hernandez said, I might not have Bill Clinton as my friend, and I might not have the money to hire Mr. Kenneth Starr and Mr. Gerald Lefcourt and Mr. Roy Black and Mr. Alan Dershowitz and Mr. Martin Weinberger and Mr. Roy Black and all the other attorneys that he hired, and there were plenty, to represent me. And is that the reason that I'm facing now 8 to 10 years? Well, his attorney, Joel DeFabio, who is handling Mr. Hernandez's case in Florida, certainly seems to think so. He believes that it is because this defendant, Mr. Hernandez, does not have the money and the influence that he is getting a much longer sentence than Mr. Epstein did. And by the way, Mr. Hernandez trafficked women, not underage girls, as allegedly Mr. Epstein did. So we've got a completely different type of crime as well. Even though there were some minor, I think there were 3 minor girls involved in Mr. Hernandez's case, but Mr. Epstein, all of the victims who came forward, who gave sworn testimonies, were all underage, under the age of 17.
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions. One is, on your website, it mentioned also, too, that they tried to bribe you. Which case was that? Was that the Epstein case?
Yes, in the Epstein case. In the Epstein case, early on in the investigation, I can't, obviously, I'm not going to reveal who that is, but early on in the Epstein case, and you'll read about that in the book, somebody contacted me and offered me money, you'll read about that as well, in order for me to stop writing the book. I, of course, did not take the offer.
Now, just today, did you happen to catch just this morning on Morning Joe that they mentioned the Epstein case?
I did indeed.
Okay, now, it kind of got past me. But the gist I got was they were talking about the Trump, this New York Times report about Trump with women, adult women, in the past. And then Scarborough made a comment along the lines of, all this Epstein stuff, is that really a big deal? Is that what I heard?
Well, look, this is what I believe. I believe that the reason that Mr. Trump has been included in this case, first of all, none of the files that I have read, and I have read thousands of files, that is, court files, depositions, sworn testimonies. I have spoken to the chief of police of Palm Beach, who was the one who arrested Mr. Epstein and who started the case. I've even spoken with several times to the prosecutor who prosecuted Mr. Epstein, who wrote a letter that I published on the Daily Beast on March 25th, 2011. You could read it there. You can also read it in my book. The prosecutor behind Epstein's case, the chief of police, all have said, and the hundreds of law enforcement officials that I have spoken to, no one ever hinted at Mr. Trump. I never heard anything about Mr. Trump. Whether I agree or disagree with Mr. Trump's political views, that's not what we're talking about here. We are now talking about bringing in a presidential candidate in order clearly to make him seem as if he is as guilty as Mr. Epstein was found guilty of something that I believe, given the files that I've read and the conversations I've had, I believe that Mr. Trump is not guilty of any criminal activity with this alleged victim named Katie Johnson.
Oh, no, yeah, I don't believe that one either. Yeah, that's ridiculous. But the thing is...
Right, Katie Johnson, a woman somewhere in California, filed a case on April 26th.
Yeah, Riverside. Yeah, I did a whole show on that. So we don't want to get too far off on that. But
so no, I don't believe. Yeah. I think that the reason Mr. Trump is being brought forward, it's a political. Clearly, this is political.
But but with Trump, Virginia Roberts did work at Mar-a-Lago for Trump, and so did her father, and also too. Yes. And Trump also too flew on Epstein's plane. We have a deposition from Epstein's brother.
I understand, and this is what I have. I have not only do I have the depositions that were given to me by a source, and forgive me, not the depositions, the pilot logs that were given to me by a source, I also have the most recent pilot logs where, according to Fox News, former President Clinton flew on Epstein's plane 26 times. I had, in my count, only 17 times. Well, I now have been told and given proof that former President Clinton flew 26 times. But notwithstanding, I believe that even though Virginia Louise Roberts worked for Mr. Trump's organization, as did her father, he was the maintenance manager, and Virginia Roberts was, I believe, a bathroom attendant, which is where Miss Maxwell meets her and finds her at Mar-a-Lago. That clearly doesn't implicate Mr. Trump as someone who abused victims. I mean, that just means that, he, as a matter of fact, immediately asked Mr. Epstein to remove himself as a member. The moment that Mr. Trump found out that Mr. Epstein had been indicted, his membership to his club was blocked.
Okay, but once again, you've read the quote by Vicky Ward, right, in the New York Magazine?
Yes, but Vicky, forgive me for saying this, Vicky Ward has gone hot and cold on Mr. Epstein and Miss Maxwell. I don't know what you've read. I've read all of Vicky Ward's stories concerning the Epstein case because they were very important stories, and I think Miss Ward is an excellent journalist. However, if you read one of her blogs right after she wrote the first Epstein story on Vanity Fair concerning Mr. Epstein and his lifestyle, she befriended Ghislaine Maxwell. And clearly, in her friendship with Miss Maxwell and Mr. Epstein, she then wrote another story, and the other story was, and I quote, that Ghislaine Maxwell overlooked, and I now in quote, Epstein's sexual pecadillos. Sexual pecadillos are far different, and the reason she said that is because she's comparing, I guess, Miss Maxwell's relationship to her father, to her deceased father, Robert Maxwell, and Mr. Epstein, and why she was attracted to Mr. Epstein. So in that online blog, and I think you could see that on Vanity Fair, you will see that Miss Ward all of a sudden becomes quite friendly and is very positive about Mr. Epstein and Miss Maxwell. Well, I mean, how did that happen? There were a lot of things that happened during her writing of that story, and we don't have time, and I'm not going to go into that now, but, all of that is in my book. What happened during Miss Ward's investigation before she published the first story in the Vanity Fair, that's also in my book, because I think that's an important part of the story.
But the quote we're talking about is where Trump said he knew Epstein for 15 years and he liked girls on the younger side just as much as I do, and along those lines.
He said he likes to have fun just as much as I do, and he likes but he says because I have the quote, but he likes girls on the younger side.
I don't think he says but okay, well, we can go over that in the future. Now, what about, too, that Prince Andrew and who was obviously abusing this young girl, Virginia Roberts, as well, this happened at Mar-a-Lago. Prince Andrew and Epstein were there staying at...
No, it didn't happen at Mar-a-Lago. Forgive me, Ed.
Okay.
According to the documents, to the depositions that I have, Mr. Epstein flew Miss Roberts to London, and this occurred in London, and Miss Roberts was staying at Miss Maxwell's apartment flat in London. So it occurred several times. Mr. Epstein, according to the documents I have, paid Miss Roberts $15,000 for her to service Prince Andrew, but it did not occur at Mar-a-Lago. It occurred all on Epstein's properties.
Well,
but nothing to do with Mar-a-Lago.
Prince Andrew and Epstein both stayed at Mar-a-Lago at the same time, no?
No. Mr. Epstein never stayed at Mar-a-Lago. Mr. Epstein was a member of Mar-a-Lago. Mr. Epstein had a home 3 blocks away, and still has that home, on El Brillo. Mr. Epstein's home is located on El Brillo, E-L-B for boy, R-I-L-L-O, which is literally 3 to 4 blocks north of Mar-a-Lago. He doesn't need to stay at
But Prince Andrew stayed at Mar-a-Lago.
No, Prince Andrew stayed at Mr. Epstein's home. That's where Prince Andrew stayed. He stayed at Mr. Epstein's home in New York, and he also stayed at Mr. Epstein's home in Palm Beach.
Okay.
I understand.
Now, let me ask you a question, because you said you were socially acquainted with Epstein and Maxwell. Was there anything about their personality that would make them so interesting that all these people would want to be visiting with them and want a friendship with them?
You know, I had superficial conversations, Ed, with both of them. I got to know Miss Maxwell a little bit more only because she attended the Clinton Global Initiative several years, as did I. I also attended the Clinton Global Initiative. And so she knows a lot of the people I know, and, you know, she's interested in politics. She's a very well-read woman. She's a very well-educated woman. She speaks several languages. So on different levels, I found her, she's you know, an interesting woman. She's quite witty. So on that level, I found Miss Maxwell to be, you know, a very interesting woman. And Mr. Epstein is also a very intelligent man. We don't understand why, given the many blessings that he's had, given the amount of wealth and influence and you know, and his resources, why he would succumb to this, or why he would decide to allegedly abuse these underage girls if he was so interested in their well-being. You know, somebody who has that kind of money, Ed, and who has those kind of resources, if you're really interested in helping people who have less than you, especially children and young girls, whether they're promiscuous or not promiscuous or whatever it is they are or come from, they're still underage. And as young adults who really don't know what life is all about at that age, if you're interested and you have that kind of money, you set up a trust for them and you put them through school. And instead of giving them $200 for an alleged sexually, active massage, you put those $200 in a trust fund so these girls could go to school. That's what you do if you're a good person and if you're really interested in the welfare of other people.
Well, yeah, but also, too, you know, it was in the search warrant, too, that they found the school transcripts of some of these kids in his office. So obviously he was targeting certain kinds of kids with trouble. Was that ever looked into? Was the school ever investigated?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of my Daily Beast stories, published January 25th, 2015, I have an on-camera interview, and I have an on-camera interview with one of the victims who I identified as Rosemary, Jane Doe number 1, because she was the first victim to come forward in the Epstein case, and it was because of her that the Epstein case broke out, you know, that he was arrested. So this particular victim was a student in high school. She was 14 years old, and she was lured to come to give Mr. Epstein a massage, and it was not supposed to be a sexual massage. It was supposed to be just a straight-out massage, even though she was 14, by a woman, by another girl, not a woman, but by a girl named Haley Robson. And Haley Robson was one of the alleged procurers. And you'll read that in the book as well, and I'm sure in 100 other media reports that are out there. So Haley Robson, who, by the way, was never charged, Haley Robson never served time, obviously she was never charged, she procured this one girl. And Jane Doe number 1 went to his house under the pretext that she would just give him a massage. And she was, I think, a freshman or a sophomore in high school. And that massage turned into something rather different. And so she never went back. She was accosted. She was threatened. She was harassed. I spoke to her mother. I interviewed her mother. And her mother said that their life turned upside down. This case made their lives miserable. The mother had to move out of Florida. Her parents were divorced, and her mother actually left Florida because she couldn't handle this. And it was quite a case because, you know, Mr. Epstein, I'm sure, and his attorneys knew that if this girl came forward, that would be it. And sure enough, they were correct. That was it.
Right, but my question is, he had to have had some access and some pull at that school. And I'll give you a couple of reasons why. When I first started reporting on this case a couple of years back, my daughter was that age. She was 13, 14 years old. I coached the girls' basketball team. Well, it was a co-ed basketball team. But I coached kids in the school. My daughter was that age. And if there was any of this going on at my daughter's school, it would spread like wildfire. All these girls being right. So now how did that go on for so long and the school not report it?
Well, the school did report it. We're now talking about this particular victim, survivor. Let's call her a survivor because she's made a U-turn. She's now about to get married. She has a great job. She just wants to put this case behind her, and she doesn't want to talk about this case to anyone anymore. But, so the schools did know. Certainly her school found out because she told this other girl her secret. And again, I don't want to, you should read the book so you'll know why. But the school found out, the principal found out, and once the principal found out, then they called her parents, and her parents came forward, and that's when they went to the police. So, in fact, the school did find out. However, many other schools, many other girls in other schools did not find out. Why did those schools not find out? That's an excellent question. But there were enough girls, and this, as you know, he created the original sexual Ponzi scheme, okay? Let's call it the pyramid scheme, because what he did was he would tell the girls who came to massage him that he would give them $200 for every girl they brought to him. And he also said that if they ever said anything, quote, something bad would happen, end of quote. That is in many, many documents that I have. So he not only threatened them, he also promised them money. So how many girls at the age of 14 do you know have access to $200? Number one. Number two, sex today, Ed, is something that we might teach our children not to go forward in that direction until they're married or until they're adults or until they're responsible enough to understand the responsibilities of having a sexual relationship with a partner. However, not all kids believe that, and it's such a prevalent thing out there in high school that a lot of kids are having sex at the age of 13. So you can't really stop them, It's up to the parents and the child, and, it takes, actually Mrs. Clinton wrote a wonderful book and said something very important. It takes a village to raise a child, she said, and she's absolutely right. It does take a village to raise a child. And unfortunately in this country, it's become very difficult to raise a child single-handedly because both parents usually work and the kid comes home alone and et cetera, et cetera. But to go back to the story, and you will read it in Trafficking, you will read it in the book, many of these girls were told that they would be given money to bring another girl, and so they did. And they were also told that if they said anything, that something bad would happen to them. Well, if you're 14 and you've just been given $200, you're not going to talk. I mean, chances are you're not going to talk, especially if you have the opportunity to earn maybe another $200 simply for introducing another friend to this man, right?
Right. A couple of questions. Wait, how did he get a hold of the school transcripts is one question I have.
I'm sorry, who get a hold of the school transcripts?
Epstein, they found it in his office.
His attorneys. I mean, his attorneys got a hold of the school transcripts. They also went on Facebook and MySpace and all the other chat rooms and applications and platforms where these girls go on. Everybody today talks about what they do 24 hours a day. I mean, kids today tell you whether they eat a hamburger, whether they cross the street, on Facebook, on Instagram, on MySpace. We live in a world where everybody tells everybody everything about their life. So the attorneys for Mr. Epstein did the schools. And they, as Mr. Epstein's attorneys, asked for the girls' transcripts, and the schools, I'm assuming, were forced to give them over the transcripts.
No, but he had the transcripts at the time they served the search warrant of the house before there was any litigation going on.
No, it's a criminal investigation. Remember, the criminal investigation took 2 years. There was a 2-year criminal investigation. The investigation began in March of 2005, and he was not given the non-prosecution agreement until October 2007. A lot of things happened in between, including a grand jury, because the Palm Beach police, who wanted this to become a federal investigation, was thwarted. And that's also in my book. And I know that we have a certain amount of time. And
Right. I got a million questions for you.
My time is up.
Okay, I know. You even gave me an extra 5 minutes. Okay, I was hoping you didn't have a clock in front of you. Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you so much, Conchita Sarnoff. The book is called Trafficking, and this organization that you're the executive director of is called Alliance to Rescue
Victims of Trafficking.
And that's atrvt.org, and your website is conchitasarnoff.com. Ms. Sarnoff, Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you very much for having me.